Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Tech Leaders Launchpad live stream. I'm Andrew Murphy, a tech leadership coach and trainer and founder of Tech Leaders Launchpad. And this is a live stream where we talk about all things technology leadership. Like many of you, I started my technology leadership journey by being the longest tenure engineer promoted into a leadership position without any understanding of what that meant. And back then, 15 years ago, I had no idea what I had to do. I didn't understand the difference between being a technologist and being a leader. And 15 years ago, there were not a lot of resources out there to help people like me. So when I got into the situation I'm in, I decided that I would help people like me, and I want them not to take the 15 years to learn leadership that I took. I want them to learn it in a lot quicker. And so Tech Leaders Launchpad live stream is all about sharing my coaches, my mentors with you and discussing the topics that I think are important for new and emerging technology leaders to learn. Today, we're going to be talking about Delegate Until It Hurts with Michael Lopp. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here, Andrew.
Yeah. I see you've got such a storied, history in leadership. I was LinkedIn stalking you before this, and I saw that you've been a leader since Netscape existed. And how do I know that? Because you worked at Netscape.
That was like job 3 too. I was at Borland. When I'm talking to an audience, I'm like, how many of you remember Borland? And it's like less and less hands every year. But yeah, but Netscape was another like great experiences in my career.
Yeah. I was a Delphi programmer for a while, so I definitely remember Borland. That was big in my university time.
Yeah.
But since then, you've also worked at companies like Apple, Palantir, Pinterest, and Slack. You've had a huge amount of impact in those organizations, but you also share what you know with the community. You've got a blog called Rands in Repose. You run the Rands Leadership Slack. You're all about giving back to the community, which I think is amazing.
That's correct. That's what I do.
Yeah. And because of that, you're joining me today to talk about delegation. If you've got any questions for Michael or I, please feel free to post them into the chat wherever you're watching this. We can get those questions whether you're watching on Twitch, YouTube, or LinkedIn. If you happen to have to drop off the live stream early, don't worry. This is a recorded live stream. You can just come back to the same webpage and watch it later. If you want to make sure you get notified about that, there'll be some links for the newsletter and the YouTube subscription channel at the end of the live stream. Let's get started. First thing I want to clear up, Michael, because I am going to make this mistake at some point during this live stream. You have this online pseudonym Rands. Right. Where did that come about?
Well, it's as we already mentioned, I've been doing this for a long time, and back in the day, there was a lot of before a lot of the social networks and everything, it was sort of like not cool to use your real name. It was sort of like you're a pseudonym, like hacker type. So like it was very common to have a strange name. And I was logging into a chat room with some friends at Netscape. And it was just like every time you logged in, it was sort of like make up a name. And something that's going to be disposable and you're going to use for a year and then you never use it again. Point number 1, be careful what name you pick. Point number 2, it's my wife's maiden name at the time. Point number 3, I did not intend it to be this thing that turned into books and blogs and t-shirts and all that sort of stuff. So that's where it came from. But it's sort of a convenience for me because you'll make the mistake. But the thing is, when you call me Rands, I know who you're talking to. You're talking to that guy that you know on the internet. We don't like know each other. I mean, we obviously interact a lot. So it's sort of an easy way when people like see me, they're like, if they call me Lopp, they're talking to the person who works at Apple. If they call me Rands, they're talking to that guy who does all that stuff on the internet. If they call me Michael, it's, my wife or something. If they call me Mike, it's my dad and he's mad at me. So I have all these names that are sort of handy, sort of early warning systems.
Oh, that's fascinating. I like this idea of like using it to be really clear. I guess the persona that this person is expecting. Do you feel like you have a separate persona when you're putting the Rands hat on versus the Lopp hat on?
A little bit. It's a good question. I like if you go read my stuff, because I've written like 3 books and blogs and blogs and blogs. The person's a little snarkier than I. He's a little bitter, so I mean that's me, but there's a little bit of sort of persona and sort of attitude that I've had, because like you said in your intro, like I was just thrown into it and no one told me what to do, and I was just kind of expecting support or anything, like a book, like something, and there was nothing. It was just like, dude, just go figure it out. So I was pretty bitter the first 5 years of writing it, but then because I'm just like, anybody please help me, and then it turned around. I'm like, oh cool, I can actually be the helper. But there was that snarkiness and kind of like in his voice that is Rands. I think he's smarter than me too, so but that's there, and that's part of the writing persona.
I love that you're talking about this person as if it's a separate person. You're using he and him, and it's fascinating to me. I do a lot of public speaking. Obviously, I do these live streams, but I also talk at conferences. And somebody that sees me presenting at a conference or sees me on these live streams, when they kind of meet me in an environment that isn't that, they're kind of surprised to realize that I'm this demure introvert.
Well, I'm the same way. And like, I do a lot of public speaking. I do all hands meetings at work and all these things. And I don't know if this is how you feel about it, but like, that's work for me. Like, this is not easy. This is a manufactured persona that is engaging and nodding and looking in the right spot, because I mostly want to hide under my table and like, play Zelda, that's kind of like my dream. So it's not, I'm not saying it's duplicitous. I'm not lying, but it is like this literal hat that I wear because I know it's entertainment. I know that I want to be dynamic and engaging and whatever, but it is truly I'm like you, I'm an introvert too. People are hard, and all of this is just a manufactured persona.
Yeah. I feel that is true to me. Like, I wouldn't say something that I disagree with, but I might kind of turn my opinions up to 11.
Yeah, and it's for public speaking. We're going to talk about delegation at some point, I swear. But for public speaking, it's like it is truly entertainment. And once you kind of once you start to kind of get the vibe of the audience, they like this, they don't like that. This kind of joke works, that kind of joke doesn't. This kind of engagement works. Like, and you find this sort of vibe, this jazz that, but I love. But it is sort of this skill that you build over time.
Yeah, no, agreed. All right, I will take the hint. Let's get into the topic of delegation. So, often when I get people to come on this live stream, we have to come up with a topic. We have to come up with something that we're going to discuss. And the question that I ask everybody to think about and try and help them come up with the topic that's meaningful for them. I asked them the question: if you could implant a thought into every new tech leader's mind, what would that thought be? And straight away, you said the phrase "delegate until it hurts."
That's right.
Why was that the thing that kind of cropped up to you straight away?
It is a rich topic. We're going to talk about it for a while, but the reason it's the most obvious thing to me is because this leadership role that we get, I say leadership more than management, just because I think it's a more aspirational word, but becoming a manager, becoming a leader, there's this, it's not a promotion. It's like this completely new job that you get. And it's a brand new job that you've never done before. And the skills and the things that you did to be a great engineer, there's the domain, the experience is good, but there's this whole other set of stuff you now have to do. And some of the things that were habits or things that you're rewarded for as an engineer you should do the opposite as a manager. And that's just super strange when you think about it. Like, and this is why I focus on the delegation, because we engineers, we just love the control and the power and the influence we get. I'm building this thing. I know how it works and I know how the system works, and it's me, and I'm going to be rewarded for being productive and getting stuff done. And I'm banging on the keyboards and I can see with my eyeballs I'm getting this thing done. It's such a hard thing for managers, new managers, to give up their Legos, to let someone else do that thing. And I think the journey, like saying it is an easy thing to do, but I think the journey of actually letting go and influencing at a distance and all that is incredibly important. And but it's so counterintuitive to us as engineers. and the things I must know everything. I gotta know all the details. I'm the accountable one. I know how to do this thing. So it's letting go of that I think is really, really important. I think it's one of the core big lessons for the first 3 years of being a new manager.
Yeah, I think there's also a huge element of you're good at this thing, which is engineering, and you gain a huge amount of personal value from doing this thing that you're good at.
Yeah.
And now you're being told not to do that thing anymore. But yet you're good at it and it feels good to do it. And so there's this cognitive, emotional mindset shift of hang on a minute, I have to not do that thing and I have to do this other thing, which maybe for a lot of new leaders, they're not good at it because it's the first time they've done it.
Yeah, I mean, just forget about them not knowing, and let's just say their instincts are good. Something's going to blow up at some point, and you're going to be you're going to be in fight or flight mode. And what are you going to do when your team is failing? Your brand new team as a brand new manager failing. You're going to regress. You're going to go back to, well, okay, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to give myself some code to write, and I'm going to do the thing. This is horrible. You demoralize the team. You don't do it too, by the way, because you're super busy being a manager and all the detritus that comes with that. So, or if you do it, you're suddenly blocking the team who's wondering why you, the manager, is doing this thing. They like that you're technical. They know that you are an engineer, but they're it's confusing to them, right? I could go on and on the signal and the optics of doing that when something explodes. And that happens. I watch it. Someone's like, I'm going to do the diving save. I'm going to write the code. I'll put the health system in. And it's always, even if you do it great, it's still, you're not acknowledging and seeing the downside of what your team is seeing when you do that.
Yeah. And the culture that you're building, this hero culture, is not a healthy culture.
Super bad. Right.
Yeah. We just got a comment from Henry. Totally agree. Leadership careers are more meaningful. I'm guessing he means the management. Yeah, I totally agree with that, Henry. And I think there's another important aspect, which is you can be a leader without having the word manager in your title. If you're a staff engineer or a principal engineer, those are leadership positions. There might not be management positions, but you're leading the organization.
And my pithy little quote there is always, leadership comes from everywhere. And the reason I say leadership so much more is yes, there's a manager and that's a role and that's a defined thing, but you're right. It can come from anywhere. And I like to see that. I like, one of my favorite things is, this isn't my favorite thing. This is one of the things I like to see is sometimes I did Palantir, Pinterest, and Slack, and I was all double engineering every 6 months for ever. So that's all I was doing, was building teams, reorging, doing all these sorts of things. And everyone suddenly thought that managers were the only ones who mattered during that rapid growth time. And this is so not true, but they're seeing all these people show up and they're like, well, if I'm going to stay relevant, I better become a manager. Right. And it turned, and some of those folks are going to be great. And some of those folks should never do that. And one of my favorite things is when folks kind of jump into it and they get about 6 months in, they're like, this sucks. I don't why am I doing this? And other places, it's oh, we failed. We promoted someone we shouldn't. I'm like, I want to throw a party. I'm like, good job, Mark. You made a good job. Go be an engineer. This is fine because you can go be a leader. You can go still have influence and all those things without that title piece. I don't like that idea that managers the source of where the power comes, because we know this is not true.
Yeah. I think, we when I do this training in organizations and I talk about the difference between the two, the joke that I always make that isn't really a joke, but kind of is. One of the benefits of the industry we're in is you can always see who the leaders are in a team. And there's a really, really simple way of doing that, which is you break production. Yeah. And everybody swivels their chairs to look at somebody. That person's the leader of that team, irrespective of their job title. By the way, I am not advocating that you break production.
I think my boss at Slack was Cal Henderson, the CTO there, and he's a dear friend, and he's going to be fine with me saying this. But when I first arrived at Slack, literally what you described happened. I was there first, second day, and suddenly Slack's down. And I'm just a hush fell over the area. It was an open seating area. I looked around and I'm like, well, you're right. Oh, yep. He's working hard. Cal is really typing a lot. And I'm like, this is lovely. He's the founder. He can do that, but he's doing exactly what you just said. He's that person to do that sort of thing. By the way, he let himself out of that situation over time, but it was exactly that. I'm like, who knows how to do this best? Oh, yep, that's Cal.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, let's get back to delegation. So what do you think? We've talked about the I guess the emotional, the mental, the intellectual challenges of starting to do this. Can you give me like an example from your personal experience where delegating a task or a circumstance kind of elevated the entire team's performance, or the culture, or the innovation that they were able to achieve?
Yeah, this is one of the things that is very common during rapid growth. Is you got to build a lot of sort of detritus around like performance management, promo stuff, and everything. And I got to Slack. I'd built like 3 or 4 of these before, and I kind of, there's things I loved about the Google model, and there's things I liked about other models. So I was kind of building my perfect model, and I'd say I got it like 80% correct. And the details are not that important, but I did it. I was like, cool. This is how promotions are selected. This is who can raise their hand. This is the manager's job. Blah blah blah. But it was pretty good, and it kind of combined different things I wanted, and I was happy with it, and I thought it went really, really well. And this is the first year, I don't know, 6 months, 12 months into the gig, and we got it all done. And then the next year rolled around, and I was just like, that was fun. I did a good job on that. I can do amazing at this, but these 3 people, new directors I'd promoted or something like that, I'm like, they're going to do it. And I like, this is like pulling teeth. And this is the problem with delegation, is like, you're like, I can get an A on this. I totally know how to do this. And I did it already. And I've been rewarded for it. And you're literally, your brain, you have to go, I'm giving you the entire thing. And by the way, the team that got it, it was driven by one of my directors, Arquay. They did so much better. There was a more diverse set of humans. They fixed errors. They fixed things I didn't even see, right? And they just ran with it. They checked in with me. We're going to do this. We're going to do that sort of thing. But what was a pretty good promotion process, or whatever the name for it was, got really good, because and it was like, I so wanted to do it, because I'm all about like, how do we build the team and whatnot. And it's still there. I was just had drinks with them like a couple of weeks ago, and they're like, yep, what's with the promo? I'm like, are you still doing blah blah blah? And they're like, yep, we're still doing that. So that was one that just, and by the way, that affected thousands of people. That was their means by which to understand how they were going to grow. And I had nothing to do with it in the last year, except like signing off on the thing. So that was one that I was really proud of. And it was really an example of a thing I so wanted to just keep doing, because I loved it. But that's the thing. They learned. I built trust with all those folks, because they knew I wanted to do it. I'm like, it's your job now. And even if you get a B on this whole thing, it's all going to be better.
And they're going to feel bought into this thing that they have created. It's such an overlooked thing. Is that
right? And even even if they get a B, you delegate that thing that you want to do, that you know you can get an A on. A B, the first time doing something, is killing it. It's killing it, and you get the trust, and they get the experience. Blah 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 blah. There's all these reasons to do it, and it's just. Again, it's just hard. It's a hard lesson for engineers in particular, like, to let go. And by the way, there's a time and place where you have to micromanage. You have to dive deep on it, and that has to be okay. So it's not delegate everything all the time. There's time when you got to go, oh, well, something's broken here, and it's up to me to taste the soup and figure out what the hell is going on here too. So that still exists. Yeah. It's not like you're up in this, high level altitude, just kind of watching things.
Let's talk about that then. I often see it as my job on these live streams to take these great inspirational, aspirational ideas and turn them into actionable tips for people, so that we don't do a 1 hour long TED talk. We've actually got meaningful, actionable things. So how does Michael identify the tasks that can be delegated, should be delegated, shouldn't be delegated? What's your decision model for that?
Well, that's a good question. It depends on the person and kind of where they're at in their career. So my recent examples are more kind of senior leader types that were, there's becoming a manager, a frontline manager, first line manager, whatever we're calling it. That's a whole ball of wax. And then there's that sort of managing of managers, which, by the way, is a whole new thing as well. You think it's all like, this is more people. It's like, no. And to believe it or not, I have had many managers who have become managers of managers who have not learned this delegation thing. They're frontline, they were still coding, and there's scenarios that works, by the way. There's like small team managers still coding. This is fine. But if we're working on scale, if we're working on you affecting and growing things at scale, then you got to be able to delegate. So for me, it's sort of like my first assessment of the person is, are they good at this? Do they know how to actually do this thing? And it's painfully obvious to me when they don't. And I'm describing in sort of this black and white sort of way. It's not like that. Like they kind of do some things, but there's other things where I'm like, like you're still doing that. And is that context that you want? So there's this diagnosis thing that I'm doing to kind of see where they're at on their delegation journey. But like I said earlier, like one of the surefire ways, when things explode, watch what they do. What do they like pull together the team that's going to solve the problem? Or do they try to solve the problem? And there's situations where both are totally acceptable. But if it's always they jump in because they want to know and they want the not an evil person, but they want the visibility and they want all that stuff that comes with being the hero. It feels good at the moment. You feel like you're saving the day, but you're demoralizing the team. You're not growing as a leader, and and there's a lot of other downside there. So it's a diagnosis piece that I'm kind of doing. It depends on the person and their journey, what specific tasks I'm going to give them in terms of learning about delegation.
And they might just feel like they're genuinely the best person to solve that problem, which, I think that's often an issue in itself. Like one of the things when I'm working with new leaders on delegation is, if you ever feel like you're the best person to do that job, then there's a problem to be fixed there. Because either you are the best person, in which case we need to work on upskilling your team to the point where you're able to let go, or you're not the best person, in which case it's an issue with your understanding of your team and your ability to delegate. So if that thought ever crosses your mind, there's a problem to be fixed of some sort.
And let's just be clear, there's also scenarios where, like I just said earlier, where you're going to be a small team and you're going to still code and you don't want to delegate, and you're good in those 3 or 5 people. This is fine. It's a different strategy than the grow as a leader strategy, but that's totally good. So it's different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, definitely. One of the other, I guess, unintended consequences of being a high delegation manager, somebody who wants to grow and develop their team a lot, and one of the ways they do that is by delegating. One of the potential downsides of that is you can take people who are, high performers and just completely overload them with tasks that you delegate to them. How do you manage that? How do you make sure that you're not doing that?
Yeah, it's I thought what we were going to ask is like, how do you turn to this person when you're just not like constantly delegating and you're like the absent manager? That's a different version. It's an it depends things. Like, it's sort of, to me, there's 2 things you're looking at. Is like, okay, cool, I have this thing I'm going to delegate, this project, this task, this coding assignment, whatever it is. There's my assessment of sort of the complexity, the hardness of it, or whatever it is, and my understanding of what this person is capable of doing. I have to figure that out. And by the way, that it should almost always be something that's going to stretch them. Like, it's something you haven't done before. Like, because that's why you delegate. Like, okay, cool, I can't do this. I need to give it to Julia or something like that. And you kind of assess whether they can do this or not. And it's a guess. You can be wrong. It's all right. But then you give it to them and you say, cool, I know this is going to be a stretch. This is a growth thing for you because of XYZ reason. And I'm here to support you. Get started. More often than not, most people start something that's really hard, get scared, and don't ask for help. This is normal. And I know this. So I go and say, I'm going to help you now because it's been a week and I've seen nothing. And maybe you're just not sharing or something. I'm making this sound sort of adversarial. I don't mean it like that. I'm like, hey, cool, what's going on? What's going on? Give me the report. Oh, no progress. All right. Well, here's 3 things that I've done in this scenario. What do you think about that? Right. So nurturing them along, giving them, some guardrails, giving them some advice, giving them a nudge, that sort of thing. So it's just assessing. And at assessment, you start to learn whether your initial assessment or are they capable of doing this was right or wrong. And again, it's gray area. Sometimes you're like, no, it was wrong. And they're like, but each week it seems to be getting better. Oh, I was right. So it's watching as they're tackling this hopefully stretch exercise and adjusting, being aware of it, not letting them flounder. Silence is almost always a bad sign. So when it's quiet, going in there and being like, pretty quiet here. What's going on? Oh, okay, interesting. So it depends thing, but it depends on the task and the person that you're delegating to.
I like that. Silence is almost always a bad thing, because like that's a good metric for people to kind of think about. If you're not, even if you're getting questions from somebody, know that they're actively thinking and working on the task. If you're hearing silence, it could either be because the person is deprioritizing that and maybe they don't understand the importance of it, or like you said, they're kind of scared of this thing that they have to do and they're kind of just putting it off because they're afraid of it.
There's another one which is related to that, which is their answers have no substance. Hey, how's it going? And it's been like 2 minutes and you're like, you're restating the problem over and over again. And I'm like, okay, we have an issue here. So that's the opposite of silence, but it's still, there's no signal.
Yeah, that's good. We got a comment from Ben here, which is an interesting kind of counter to that. One time I was helping a team with a very simple task. I accidentally found out that we didn't have 100% parity between staging and prod, which we proceeded to fix. This is a great example of sometimes, even as a director, as a leader of leaders, sometimes diving in and kind of gaining a bit of situational awareness is incredibly useful.
This is a whole nother conversation to have, but this is a really good example of staying technical. We were talking about this over on the Rands leadership Slack recently, and it's a big deal. And both from a credibility of your team perspective and just this thing here, which I don't know this guy, but like he's soup testing. I'm going to help out here and and it's just suddenly you get to see this sort of like, see how the flow works. What does production look like? What's the deployment process look like? Whatever. There's a million things there, right? And that's just an important way to kind of keep in touch with sort of both your technical aptitude as well as the team. I love to do these things. You can't do it all the time because then you're like this person who's swooping in all the time. But it's a good way to kind of, I call it soup test, soup taste.
Yeah. It's like just making sure, just going in there, just having a bit of a taste and seeing. I think as engineers, we value that technical expertise. We can have a really interesting debate on the validity of that, but that is just the fact that it exists, and being a leader who knows technical stuff does improve the confidence of your team.
And it doesn't have to be the deep knowledge anymore. I worry about this all the time because we work in this industry that is moving so quickly. But you have to be cognizant of it. And it's not you don't have to be a wizard at it, but you do have to be like, oh, this is kind of like Delphi. This is a program like Delphi. Oh, like you can see sort of the evolution of this. Oh, Kubernetes is a container. Oh, I think I understand this, right? So it's a part of as a technical leader, and this is something at my current employer that's really important. The moment that the team doesn't believe they're just like, we're not listening to this person anymore, right? They can tell when you don't know, and that's a kiss of death.
Yeah, I describe it as understanding the puzzle pieces and how the puzzle pieces fit together, but not necessarily the command lines to execute each puzzle piece. Not my last job, but the job -2. I was overseeing cloud, data engineering, mobile dev, video game dev, and UI UX. There is no way that I can know the intricate details of all of those things. But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't understand the things that they're doing, the puzzle pieces, and the upsides and downsides, the trade-offs in all of those puzzle pieces. That for me is the mark of where I want to get to as a director overseeing things.
And there's something really important that you're saying there that is related to delegation, which is it goes both ways, right? Like in that scenario, when you've got such service area that you have to be aware of, you're delegating things. And that's not just you saying, here's this thing I need you to go do in the video game platform or blah, blah, blah. There's also the contract is bidirectional. It's like, hey, I need you to do this and I'm going to maintain it. And I need to know these things. Like this is the way that you can keep me in the loop on that. And that return communication, those tells you how they're doing. But when it gets really good and you can scale that really well, that's how you're keeping track of this large labyrinthian complex machine is all of these pieces that you're working with are giving you signal back about what's working and not working and where they need help and that sort of thing. Like that's the game. Like that's the game, is how do you communicate out and how do you scale out your communications and also scale it back into you? So, and it's a byproduct of a good delegation, because you learn how to communicate with these folks, because they're like, okay, cool. Lopp cares about these things. He doesn't care about that. So
that's a great segue to a question from Priya. For higher risk projects, what are your thoughts on chunking delegation or setting communication expectations with a delegate?
It's a great question. I know this person. Hi, Priya. What's thoughts on chunking delegation or setting communication expectations? Well, we just talked about the second part really quick, which is sort of that protocol that you're setting up with them, which is sort of like, hey, this is what I need you to do. This is what winning looks like, and these are the things I want to hear back. I'm being vague, which is annoying because it depends on the project and the person and the complexity of the thing. So, but I talk specifically with this person who's asking a question every week. What are the things we should be communicating this week about these large projects? And the projects I work on are huge and with thousands and thousands of people. So it evolves as a function of the release. So in the chunking piece, I think the question, the way that I think about it is sort of like, I don't know if this is what she's asking, but it's like, how much can this person actually, how much can they actually be responsible for, right? So I'm just dealing with something today where it was so big, this situation, doesn't matter what it was so big. There was so many people working so well on this thing, but no one was sort of pulling it all together so that we could understood the health of it. Like the more that I picked at, I'm like, there are so many things. People have delegated everything. There's so many working parts here, but that back piece, that they chunked it up, which is great. But the thing we didn't do is we didn't actually put together that membrane or that layer above it that's going to bring it all back to understand what all those different chunks are doing. So I'm going to change the question. It's sort of like, how are you going to chunk it up and but still allow you as the leader accountable for that thing to actually know what's going on? That system, that bidirectional system, is super important.
Yeah. So like I said, my job is to give people actionable tips. So how do you do that? Can you give me an example of that system? Can you give me an example of how that might work?
Well, I work on operating systems, so like this is super complex, and I think that we only have we only have another 20 minutes. Again, I think comes down to aptitude, which is sort of like how much do I need to chunk this? Can I just give it all to Priya and I can trust that that's going to happen? Great, that's ideal. That's single accountability, work of art, Godspeed. That's always the case. So okay, I'm going to have, because I have lots of stuff at Apple, so I've got something huge, which is got multiple teams, not just mine, but other teams that I'm doing it. Okay, cool. I know who the responsible party is, and do I know who the other responsible party is? So there's sort of this map in my head. I mean, it's kind of like what you just said at the beginning. When production goes down, you're like, look around and seeing who's important. That's the same thing for delegation, especially big delegation. It's sort of like, cool, in my head, do I understand this feature, this product, this system? That's not number one. That's an important thing. And do I know the nodes, people, not teams, people who can tell me about how this networking thing works? What program manager can tell me about how all that works there? So to me, it's, do I have a map of all of the sort of leaders that are kind of running this thing? And that's what I'm saying. When everything blows up, that's what I'm doing. I'm looking around, I'm calling meetings, and I'm like, okay, things blowing up. I know people are working hard. Who's the leader here? And it's not always the manager. Sometimes it's Jesse, that great engineer who's just like cranking in nodes and is comfortable talking to an exec, right? So it's that node thing that I think is the thing I'm thinking of for a complex thing, is who are that network of people that are everyone's getting the work done, but they're the ones that are sort of the central parts of the team.
I like that idea of kind of focusing on the individuals, not the teams, because like you said, the leaders might not be the managers. This is an interesting segue to James's comment here. I'd like us to discuss this. I use as a personal general rule of thumb, where if a manager can explain implementation details as well as their DR, then it's a flag something hasn't been delegated well. I think my thoughts on this is that situational. If you've got, say, a leader with a team of 4 or 5 under them, I would probably expect the manager to be able to
Right.
do that. But yeah, if you're overseeing, say, 2 teams, you probably, that's the threshold at which maybe James's point is valid.
It's a really interesting point though, because like you just said, I can see it both ways, right? And I made the big mistake or mid-career where I'm like, okay, cool. Here comes scale. I'm gonna go be a VP. And I went too far away from technical, and I couldn't tell you at all any of the implementation details. This was a mistake for reasons we just talked about. My team was like, does he even know how this thing works, right? And I didn't. Like, I did not. And that's the bad end of this spectrum. I think he's talking more about sort of that other end when I'm like down at every single detail. No, I agree with that. But you don't want to take this and just like truly push it all away, especially as an engineer, but not even an engineer. One of the things I really like about my current company is everybody's expected to have defensible opinions about the things we build. Everybody. There's no product managers. That means that role is not filled by anybody. It's filled by everybody. Ooh, good line. So, and that means you have to be able to explain, this is why this feature works this way, or this is why we do it this way. And it's you do, not someone else. And yes, you have to gather the data and that sort of thing. And I think that's so important as a leader, not just from technical details, but for anything, about sort of being curious and being, I always think of my job as sort of 2 parts, 2 different roles. I'm half QA, because that's my job. It really is QA. Sniffing around. Where's this broken? Is this broken? This smells broken. Uh-oh, we have a problem here. Da, 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 da. And then I'm a journalist. I'm an investigative journalist, which is, where are the facts? What's going on here? How can I explain this? How do I explain this to my boss, right? Those are like my 2 jobs that I do all of the time. And it's being technical and being informed is sort of it's a slippery slope here.
Yeah, I was speaking to Alistair Coburn, one of the founders of the Agile Manifesto, on Thursday night. And the entire topic of our conversation was this idea that a lot of engineering teams tend to, or the engineers within the teams tend to sometimes get relegated to order takers who don't feel empowered to question the why behind things. And it's such an anti-pattern.
This makes me mad when I hear this. Like I number one, there's people who are just coasting, and that's fine. This is not what they do. They want to like be a, I don't know, windsurfer. Great, Godspeed. That's fine. But like, I'm in this to do this thing and to be the best at it, and to do that. And I want my team to have that as well. What you just described is one of the reasons I went back to Apple, because everyone is deeply involved in the process, and like that. I think that's an amazing thing for humans, because they get to feel like, this is mine. People ask me what I think about it, and I can tell them, and they listen to me. Oh my God, that's great. This world, and there's many great product managers out there, dear friends of mine, where the bad ones go and say, yeah, this is what you should do. Okay, here it is. Here's the thing. Here's the spec. Here's the spec. I wrote it down. Just follow the spec. I'm exaggerating only a little, but there's a lot of bad ones that are like that. This drives me delulu. It's so demoralizing, and it's so counter to like a healthy team building products they care about.
Yeah, I use the phrase, as the leader of your squad, you need to focus on the outcomes of your squad, not the outputs of your squad.
Right.
And if you're only caring about the code you produce, not the change in the world that is made because you produce that code, then you're not looking at the right kind of level of the impact that your squad is making.
I totally agree.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so I can't believe we're 40 minutes into this already. I've got through half of the questions.
I told you this was going to happen.
All right. So let's talk about for delegation. How do we measure the success of that? How do we know if our internal decision-making framework is working? What signals can we get as a leader to know if we need to reassess our decision-making framework on the tasks that we're delegating?
Well, again, we're talking about humans, and humans are all sort of unique. So it sort of depends on the human. But if we can kind of abstract out sort of lessons or signs of successful delegation, I think about people in my past jobs who have truly done this. I think it's number one is kind of like we already said, like did they really give it away? Are they really at a distance doing the work? Because again, so many times it's like they get halfway, they get frustrated, and they're like, "Cool, I'm just going to write this framework for you super quick." No, right? Like that, an error. So number one is, this is a good answer. Number one is, do they truly do that? And you can tell, you can see it. And if that's true, if they pass the first test of truly having handed it off to somebody else or a team or whatever the right way they delegated it. Number two is, do they still know everything that's going on? It's that second part. It's that bidirectional part, which is, have they built the trust with the person that they delegated to, such that the trusted person says, "Hey, by the way, this is going on," and like that's it, right? They have that. They're not silent. They're not hiding, and the person they delegated to, and the person who is a delegator is still as informed about what's going on with that thing, right? That means they handed it off. They're not they're driving it. They're owning it. They're accountable for it, but not doing it, right? It's a subtle thing I'm describing, but that's the thing, is like, because sometimes they take delegation. It's like, it's not my problem anymore. It's like, wow, did you not hear me at all? Like, you're accountable for that. And by the way, it is harder because you are giving it away, and you have to figure out how to gather the information, the status, and the context at a distance via other people who want to own it and probably don't want to talk to you because you're your manager or something. So it's those two pieces. Did they delegate it? Are they still as informed as if they were doing the work themselves? Ooh, someone write that down. That was good.
If only we were recording this. It's funny because that's a mistake that I made. So when I first got into manager of managers as a position, I felt like my job as a manager of manager was to delegate complete autonomy to my team and take no accountability for their outcomes. And I would have my boss saying to me, "Hey, what's so and such working on? How are they doing?" And I'd say to my boss, "Why don't you speak to them? Like, that's it's my job to support them. It's not my job to kind of control them." And I realized very, very quickly that just doesn't work, because at the end of the day, they're still humans. They still need support, but they still need operational support. They still need, especially if they're new in their leadership journey, they might not make the decision that is the best decision for their team. And, I need to be there as their backstop, but I also need to make sure that I understand what's happening.
And you're describing a skill set that I haven't really thought about a lot. I've been thinking about it recently, but there's a huge part of this, and this is more of a senior leadership skill than a delegation skill, but they're very related, which is, you have to, as a senior leader, you have to be able to delegate those things and be totally accountable. There's this skill to, like, and it's not just that one thing you delegated, because you're a senior leader. You've got 5 teams and there's 6 managers in there, and you've got to figure out what is your communication cadence, your communication contract with all those teams. They have to build so that when someone asks you, "Hey, what's going on in the project?" "Yeah, this is what's going on. I know what it is." That they're doing a soup, that person, that hypothetical SVP, he or she is doing a soup test on you, soup tasting test. There's something there to know, like, does he know? Does he understand? Maybe they heard something. Maybe they don't know, but they are checking there, and they're not looking for you to say what you said, which is sometimes a fine thing, which is like, "Oh, go talk with Julia. I don't know what's going on there." They want to know that, are you on top of it? And it's sort of a little test. And you have to have the system to be able to informed of all of those things, which is a huge amount of things, and all the important stuff's getting to you. Super critical senior leadership skill that we're talking about here.
Yeah, I was coaching somebody recently, and they just been moved into that position. And their response to me talking to them about this topic was, "What? So I have to be responsible for the success or failure of all of my teams, even though I don't have direct control over exactly what's happening in my teams?"
Like you said, we're giggling about it, but like, it takes a while to figure that out. They really do, because like, there's this depression that comes for new engineers, managers, where they're like, "Oh, I'm handing it off and I don't know anymore." Yeah, no, you still have to know everything. It's not everything. It's this sort of subset of things that you have to, like, agree to and communicate on. But and it's tricky. I'm still working on this skill set right now.
Yeah. We got a comment from Ben. "I've been in that role if my boss needs to go and talk to the teams directly all the time, why are you here? Yeah,
Right.
great point. You know, if your boss is looking for you to effectively delegate the accountability of that squad, those set of teams to you, and if your boss has to bypass you all the time, he's not delegated the accountability for those teams.
This is hypothetical, but like, I mean, I'm assuming it's hypothetical. There's also a problem with your boss there, I would say, potentially, which is like, let's just say you're doing everything right, which maybe you're not. But also if they're just like, if they keep on jumping down there, like there's an anti-pattern in there as well. Like, I'm here for a reason. Like, I have all the information, and you just do the information. You don't need it from, Bob or whatever. So like, why aren't you coming to me? So there's something to debug in that scenario as well, or at least pay attention to.
Yeah, and that is not a hypothetical. I have had that before.
It's usually a bad sign in my world. Like, if they're coming by me, they're like, okay, well, Lopp isn't going to add any value to this, and I'm like, okay, that's a sign. That means I don't know, and they believe I don't know, which is that's a bug report right there.
Yeah. I talk to giving people feedback and receiving feedback often, and a big mantra that I say to people is feedback is always useful, even when it's wrong.
Yeah.
And so, if that is feedback from your boss, the feedback from your boss there is they don't trust that you have this information.
And you have to be.
They may be wrong.
Right.
They may be factually wrong, but it's still useful feedback.
Yeah, it is. And like, the thing about feedback is we've gotten so much crappy feedback in our careers that when it's coming. You can sense it. I can sense it. I know it because I've been giving and receiving it for so long. And I know when people don't want to give it to me, I can sit here and get the hair on my back of my neck right now in this hypothetical settles, you go like, oh, here it comes, right? And the thing that I have learned over years of both good and bad feedback is exactly what you just said, which is I literally put my feet flat on the floor because I can see it coming. I cross my hands, I interlace all 10 fingers, and I do not feel a thing. I will feel a thing at some point. It's just listen to it. And because it is like, even if it's a horrible person telling you something awful, I'm in my head, I'm like, horrible person telling me something awful. Why are you saying this? Like, what is going on here? I'm just thinking about it. I'm not sitting here getting mad, which is probably what they want in this scenario. But I'm like, okay, that's really good feedback. Thanks. I'm going to do this, and this around that. And there. So it's again, this is a senior leadership skill because you're going to get so much more feedback, and the compliments go away as a function of your title. You kind of was great. Everyone was supportive when you got out of university, and then you're like, well, why isn't anyone nice anymore? It's like, because you're a senior leader now.
Yeah, you're expected to know that you're doing a good job, which is a totally other topic of conversation. Because that's a big one there. We should do a senior leadership one. There's a lot. That's my next book is on this topic. So because I'm thinking about it. We should definitely do a live stream on that. Okay, so we're getting close to the top of the hour. I wanna end on a mindset question. So one of the things that I'm really keen on is when we go through these journeys of development as humans and as leaders, there's kind of a pathway that we need to go through. There's kind of the mindset shift, the emotional shift, and then learning of the skill set. But what that means is the mindset has to come first. We have to kind of change our internal narrative, change the way that we're thinking about the situation before the skills actually can be learned and implemented. Yeah. So for new leaders, for leaders who are just in their first leadership role, who are struggling with this and feel it deep in their heart that they can do this job better than anybody else in their team, and delegating it is a waste of time.
Right.
What advice do you have for those people to shift their mindset?
The question I ask for the people who resist this, and you're describing it sort of adversarially, but there's very healthy times when people are like, it's super important that I keep on doing this work because of blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. My response to that is, so what's your dream for your job? Why did you want to become a leader? And there's a million answers to that. But one of the answers is often like, well, like I feel like I can have more influence. So I want to do more or something like that. I'm like, okay, great. So this person that is holding on to isn't delegating as much. Your job as a leader is to do more at a further distance from the things. You're scaling. Your job is to do more. And I deeply, deeply deeply, most days miss coding, which is why I write so much, because it kind of scratches that itch of building something. That's how I've like calmed myself down, because I don't do it at work. I shouldn't do it at work. Because what I want to do is I want to do the things I love, which in the case of Michael Lopp, Rands, or whatever his name is I like to build product, and I want to build a lot of it. And I can't do that by myself. I need these talented teams of empowered people who can get this thing done. And the only way I can do that at scale is to delegate the piece, and all the other things, and a bunch of other things as well. But that's like the core thing, is I have to step back and kind of be working at this more abstract level, right? And that's how I have it. So I know you like to code. You still want to be hands-on, great. But you're limiting your ability to do more, to have more influence, to have more surface area. So you want to do that? If you don't want to do that, that's fine. There's plenty of reasons to do that. But you want to scale, delegation is like one of the core skills you have to build. Ooh, good answer.
Yeah, I am clipping that and posting that. All right. We are at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, Michael, for joining me. We've got a few things to finish up on. This is a regular series of live streams that I do. The next one is in a week's time. If you're in Australia, like I am, I apologize for the time zone. There is no good time between the UK and Australia right now. And Claire Sudbury, who's going to join me to talk about how and why you should onboard juniors, is based in the UK. So this will be at 11 p.m. Eastern Australia time, which sucks. But I'm still hugely looking forward to this conversation with Claire. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you can get notified. If you're watching on LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn. If you're watching on Twitch, subscribe to the newsletter. Is there anything you want to mention, Michael? Do you want to? We've mentioned it once, but do you want to kind of promote the Rands leadership?
Yeah, Slack? We've got you on this. We are part of this Rands leadership Slack. It's about 32,000 folks now. Just type in Rands Slack into any of your browsers, and it'll tell you how to get there. There's a little process to go through, but probably one of the most things I'm most proud of in terms that I built is this community of leaders that are just sitting there helping each other. So. It's in the requirement to get in is, can you work email? Make it look like there's a lot of work to do. There's not. Can you work email? And you're in. Don't worry about it.
Awesome. And yeah, it's a great community, a great resource. I love the learning that I get from it. I love the shift in my mindset that I get from it. It's amazing. Yep. If you want to know more about me, if you want to know more about Tech Leaders Launchpad, there's some links here. You can subscribe to the newsletter. I post all the time about leadership topics. I do these regular live streams. Tech Leaders Launchpad, there's a post on there to talk about this kind of stuff. So once again, thank you very much, Michael Lopp, aka Rands, for joining me. And I enjoyed our conversation immensely.
Yes, thank you, sir.
All right. See you, everybody.